So Robert Ross, once he is admitted into the army, he seeks out a role model that he can emulate. Uh, so he really wants a kind of hegemonic male authority figure who will teach him and who he can sort of learn how to be a soldier from. So who's going to teach him this violent form of masculinity that he's going to have to master in order to be a soldier. And he finds this role model in Eugene Taffler, and he kind of puts Taffler up on a pedestal and looks up to him because Taffler is a war hero, and Taffler is somebody who has proven himself on the battlefield already. So on page 24, it says, what he wanted was a model, someone who could teach him by example how to kill. Robert had never aimed a gun at anything. It was a foreign state of mind. So what he wanted was someone who had acquired that state of mind, who killed as an exercise of the will. So in order to be a man, to be a soldier, you also have to master your weapon, right? So the gun is a very almost like a phallic symbol, but it's what Robert has to master or use skillfully in order to prove himself as a soldier. So that's what he wants somebody to teach him, to kill and to be the man that he wants to be, right? So to achieve his ideal form of masculinity. So that man is Eugene Taffler. And he meets Eugene Taffler while he and his childhood friend Clifford Purchase are out looking for a horse, a stray horse that's going to be broken. So they're looking for horses out that have gotten away, and they're going to wrangle them, and they'll be broken in and controlled. So this horse symbol is also evident in relation to the scene. And there is Eugene Taffler. So he, in the distance, is a figure who could be seen throwing stones at a row of bottles lined up on a board. So Eugene Taffler is there throwing a rock at all these glass bottles and killing those bottles, breaking them, shattering them. And Robert asks his friend Clifford, who is it? Clifford said, that's Eugene Taffler, you idiot. Robert said, oh, subdued. Taffler was a hero. He'd already been to France, wounded, and returned to Canada. Now he was fully recovered and sent west to look over the horseflesh prior to being reposted overseas. He also had been a varsity all-round athlete, though this was before Robert's time, and therefore Taffler's face was not familiar to him. His name, however, was credential enough. So Taffler is already sort of well known. He's a war hero. He's a hero. He's also a varsity all-round athlete. And he's somewhat intimidating to these two young men who look up to him and see him as an authority figure. And Taffler's there, every bit the hegemonic male, handsome, muscular, 6 foot tall, and here he is doing some very sort of shooting or breaking bottles with a rock. So he's destroying something. So this is also part of his prowess as a killer, as a good soldier. So at the bottom there of page 29, Taffler gave him a smile. Well, he drawled and squinted at the bottles, took aim and threw a stone. It arrived and the bottle was demolished. That's what I'm doing, he said, killing bottles. So it's part of his, he was a football star, and this is him throwing stones, killing bottles. And he talks a little bit about his military experience. And he says, it's a pity The distance, he said, between our line and theirs is often no more than 100 yards. And then he said, all you get in this war, he said, is one little David against another. Then he threw and broke the tall, thin neck clean off, like that, just a bunch of stone throwers. Robert wondered if the bitterness was only the twist in his throat as he threw the stone, or was it really that Taffler wanted the war to pit him against Goliath. So we have an allusion here to David and Goliath, the myth of David and Goliath, where David, just an ordinary man, takes on a big giant, the giant Goliath, and hits him with a rock and beats him. So for Taffler, the war seems to be somewhat of a disappointment to him. He maybe had built it up or had, read stories about what war should be like, and the reality of it didn't meet his expectations. He says all it is just, you can see your enemy 100 yards away, and it's just a guy just like you are. One David against another. So just one ordinary man against another ordinary man. There is no sort of larger than life bad guy. There's no, monolithic evil dictator to take down. It's just the enemy is just an ordinary soldier, just like you. So he seems somewhat disappointed, or the expectations for glory or to prove yourself as a man or as a hero seems like it's not lived up to its expectation. So Taffler is disappointed with the war in some regards because he hasn't been able to, or hasn't met his expectation of challenge. But Robert sees Taffler as a role model, somebody he can emulate. So this is his attempt to sort of emulate and start looking at Taffler as somebody who he can look up to and learn from. So this is on page 31. He was thinking that perhaps he'd found the model he could emulate, a man to whom killing wasn't killing at all but only throwing. Bam, a bottle. A man to whom war wasn't good enough unless it was bigger than he was. Bam, a David. A man who made his peace with stones. So Taffler had already been to the war, the battlefield, and he was already accomplished as a war hero, so he is a skilled soldier, so Robert sees him as somebody he can look up to and emulate. So Robert's idealization of Taffler will be shattered once he witnesses what is a very shocking moment when he visits the Lousetown brothel. But before that point, Robert and the other soldiers decide to go visit a brothel before they're shipped overseas. So this is sort of another rite of passage, a sexual rite of passage that soldiers or young men would go through. And the use of women as this kind of sexual commodity is also evident in the brothel, where women are used or objectified, part of an exchange, and these young men are bolstering their status by visiting this brothel, right? And there's a lot of peer pressure, homosocial coercion and homosocial pressure as these young soldiers sort of force each other or bully each other into going through with this moment. So on the bottom of page 32, Robert had to be coerced into going against his better judgment, but the coercion was simple. He was shamed into going. If you didn't go, you were peculiar. It was that simple. The barracks and the boarding school leave little room for the individual when it comes to sex. Either you do or you don't, and if you don't, you face a kind of censure most men would rather avoid. As for it being against his better judgment, Robert was certain he would fail. So not only is there a kind of coercion, sort of pressure, peer pressure, or homosocial pressure. There's also this threat, this act of gender policing that's going on where, if you didn't, you were labeled peculiar, right? And you would be sort of isolated or ostracized or humiliated. Shame is what he says. He'd feel shame if he didn't go through with it. So there's a lot of sort of homosocial pressure and gender policing going on in this scene. And Robert knows he's going to fail even before he attempts to sort of fit in. His failure is, a way to, or evidence that he, has no, or he doesn't really fit the model or mold of the conventional hegemonic man, right? So in reality, Robert is probably more realistic in terms of how a young man might face something that scares him. So his failure is also a kind of humbling experience. But he decides to go because he sees Taffler's dog and a bottle. So he left it with a stone on top by the hitching post. So because Taffler is at the brothel, Robert knows, he should be doing this. He should be participating in this sort of rite of passage and being one of the guys, one of the boys, and participating in this sexual episode. But Robert is, obviously very innocent, sexually naive, and he hasn't had much interest in women and girls. He's very intimidated by the prostitute Ella, who sort of comes onto him or flirts with him, and he doesn't meet the expectations, I guess, of masculinity or sexual prowess, and suffers a kind of embarrassing shame when he ejaculates in his pants, right? So I don't know what the nicer way of saying that, but he is embarrassed and ashamed, and the whole scene ends with a kind of almost like traumatic moment where he's forced into a position by the woman Ella, who forces him to confront what is happening in the next room beside theirs. So this is where he will find out that it's Taffler and another man who are engaged in a sexual relationship in the room next to his room. So this causes him a measure of sexual panic and makes him question or his ideal of masculinity, the man he put on a pedestal, all that fantasy or illusion of hegemonic masculinity sort of falls or shatters in this moment.